Hello there, I'm Flair, and today I'm going to continue my variant making tutorial series. This is episode 1B, that being the first video of actual variant making opposed to map drawing. In this video we will handle the very first steps of making your very first variant, being handling references and selecting the initial powers for your map. A very exciting process, and this is where you have to throw around concepts and find out what you want to do, really. So that's super neat. So I've prepared a couple of things because we're gonna make a map of Japan in 1573, right after the collapse of the Ashikaga shogunate, with a bunch of very cool different powers. So the first thing I'm gonna show you guys is how to bend and twist and so on to make multiple different reference images fit together. This is often something I do because I often have one reference image as the main one, which includes like coastlines and main borders and such. But often you want new references to find exact placements of cities, or draw internal borders well, or maybe some neutral has a very specific historical borders you want to fit. In that case, it's very important to be able to fit these reference image together. So the main reference we will use is this one because it's really good. It has a lot of city names and all the different powers we could possibly use for this variant. Super cool. But I will also try to fit this image onto the other one just to show you how it works. So if we just slide this over, we can already see that they are, of course, not the same size. That's not great. So, but what we will do is we will attempt to transform this image in different ways. And this is mostly just trying to get a feel for it once again. But there's a lot of different tools we'll try out. So remember, we have this resize thingies. We have the rotations, and we also have these tilts, which I think we might need here. So these are the main tools I use when just trying to fit images on top of each other. It's good to just slightly lower opacity here to get some better insight. Let's see here. Okay. So it will often be quite hard to perfectly fit images together, but we will do our best, and sometimes we might have to cut the image up a bit and divvy it up, move it around between the different sections and such. But we will try our best to use these tools to get the map down. As you can see, we're actually getting somewhere already. So just stretching and fitting, trying to perfect these borders. This is not perfect so far, but might be the best we can reach. But basically, it doesn't have to be perfect, but that's a general method I do to make multiple reference images fit together. For now, we'll only use this one though. So, we will now quickly go into a time lapse while I try to take this reference map and draw it up on a map, just like trace the borders and such. And meanwhile, I will explain some of my thoughts about placing the powers and maybe some history to go along with it. I'll see you in a minute with my voiceover. So, voiceover flair is here. I don't know if the audio like quality changes now, but we'll have to see. Oh well, so in the background you can see me slowly tracing the borders of the Japanese islands. So as said, this variant will take place in 1573, which is the same year as the last shogun of the Ashikaga shogunate gets expelled from Tokyo, which was so, and we're in this very war-y time and have been for almost 100 years. It's called the Sengoku period, if I've understood it correctly. How do we go about selecting powers for this map? There's a lot of good options on the reference that we found. The first step should always be to consider what were historically the most important powers. And some very clear ones here would be the Mori in pink at the left, the Oda, the red in the center, the Takeda right next to them in purple, and then Hojo and Uesugi right next to them as well. So already there we have 5 powers which I'd probably like to have on the map. These were said quite historically powerful, that's always the first step. Then you would need to consider is there any of these that I cannot include, and this one might be a bit harder to say, but pretty much you want to make sure that powers have space to find neutral centers. And so far I don't have any big issues here. Even Takeda, who is very much encircled by other players, should be able to find centers just to the north of them, in the Kaga area, and possibly to the south as well, but we'll get to that later. So one very important thing when considering power placement is triangle dynamics. So what's meant by that? We can start with discussing the classic map, which of course has 7 powers. Although there's multiple different what we call triangle dynamics on that map. For example, Germany, France and England, or Russia, Austria and Turkey. These are powers that are placed in triangle formation, kind of, where every power in the triangle can attack one of the other 2. In these kind of dynamics, it means that you will have to try to convince one of the other 2 players to attack the third, and try to avoid getting teamed up upon by the other 2. This is just like the purest form of diplomacy, and is often something we should aim towards, because it just gives us 3 interesting gameplay, which is awesome. We will later, after the time-lapse, go over the map and see what kind of triangles we can find. But that's a big one we really have to look into. You can do other things than triangle dynamics, but it's way harder. So, our time lapse has left us with the following result. I just went in real quick and added some smaller islands like Tsushima and so on. But here's our coastline. Awesome. We have all the different islands as different objects here in this list. I will now close this because we'll probably not edit it anymore, and you can probably lock it as well. Alright, so let's open up the references again and let's start sketching because we need to select what powers we wanted. So during the time lapse I proposed a couple different layers. I'll add a layer which I'll call sketching for now, and I'll make some circles, one circle for each power we have decided to add. The first power will be the Oda. Let's bring this above references actually. So the Oda will be in the middle here with this probably red color because pretty cool. I'll set the exact colors down the line. This is just sketch. So this is one of the most important players historically, so they'll definitely be there. As said, I also wanted Mori, so I'll just copy this circle and I'll stick it in here. I'll make him a yellow for now. We'll fix colors later. And I'll do the same for these other 5 players we considered. Let's make them blue. These guys can be this orange, and Takeda can be... Oh, actually that's stupid. We can't do that. They can be pink. A bit more pink, preferably. Nice. Okay, so as said, when we were designing the maps, we wanted to try to set up these triangle dynamics. So let's see if we already have some, or rather, what relationships we think we expect just from the geography. And I can see quite quickly that this will likely create a triangle. I will create a bunch of lines like this. I'll just thicken them up, drag them below. So this is a structure I believe we will have. The Hojo, Uesugi, and Takeda will all have these like shared borders, so they will probably interact like a triangle, which is super cool. So what interaction do we think we have with the Oda? So far, the only one I'm sure of is of course Takeda and Oda. They're close borders. Depending on how the neutral centers in this area is set up, we could see borders up to Isugi, but I think that this is a much weaker connection. What other connections do we have? We probably have just a straight line over to Mori here as well. So this is what our relationship chart is like so far. So the plan here is now to try to find ways to triangularize these dynamics even more. And to do this, I want to begin with taking a look at the Kyushu and Shikoku islands, and I did some research, and the strongest clans on the 2 islands were the Shimasu and the Shosokabe. I don't know how to pronounce these things, so I will go ahead and add these 2 powers because I think they have some potential, and the relationship charts will show that quite well, I think. And then the Shizumatsu, they can get a nice purple color, and we'll continue sketching out these relationships. So the Mori and the Shosokabe will very likely have early conflict. Maybe there's, for example, neutral here in Kono that they could fight over. or something like that. So I expect we have a connection here. But also, I think the Shosokabe and the Oda are going to have could be set up to have a relationship. Because I'm considering if Miyoshi here should just be one like canal tile, which could be a neutral supply center, which both could vie for early on. So let's add, try to create that relationship as well. Now we have added a new triangle to the board. That's awesome. Shosokabe and Shimazu, of course, share this ocean space, but also a lot of neutral land in between. So I expect we'll see a relationship between these two powers as well. And of course, the Shimazu and Mori actually share an island up here. I'm thinking this area could also be a canal type tile, so they'll probably vie for control over like Otomo, Sagara, Nito. So I will draw an attempted relationship between these two as well. Oh, a fill. Remember, we can remove fills up here. And would you look at that? We're starting to develop some triangles. This is awesome. So right now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 players. That's cool and all, very nice. And we could be happy here, I think, technically. In general, I'd like to see if we can find something for the north though. And I'd also like to possibly include Tokugawa as a power here. Tokugawa is of course the clan that during the coming 30 years gain control and form a new shogunate. So that would be really fun. We of course see the Tokugawa in imperial diplomacy. So I'd like to include them as a power. So there's some arguments against it doing so though, mainly being neutral placement. Where are they getting their neutrals if Oda, Takeda and Hojo is all right on top of them? I'm considering if Hojo's fleet could be on this coast, and if we could get the Tokugawa neutral on one of these islands, and maybe over here in Kii, with a half isolated center. So that I think we can make it work, but normally I might not advise for a power that has no land connection to a neutral area. This actually happens in Classic though. For example, Italy. Italy is not connected to any land areas that are neutral, only Tyrolia and Piedmont, right? And of course Trieste. So there is dynamics like that in Classic, but you're best to be careful with it. So let's add the Tokugawa, and let's give him the classic imp dip color, kind of something like that. So how will this impact your relationships? Well, I suspect we will see a triangle with Takeda and Oda, like that. But I also think there's potential for a triangle with Takeda, Tokugawa and Hojo, which is very fun, because we're starting to really make this entire area really complex dynamics-wise. Finally, I'd like to add a player up here. This is mostly due to me just wanting to include that part of the map. Technically, we could, if we wanted to, just like take the background here and cut off the map like that. That's it. Honestly, pretty good option here as well. But I'd like to try to include this part of the map as well. So I will do so. Let's bring up the reference and let's make them this kind of color. but a bit more green. Nice. So this power, I think, is going to be one of the more naval powers, and it probably doesn't have that rich of a neutral axis, since it's so safe and far away from everyone else. And that's something you need to consider while setting up the board. So let's see here. Let's draw the triangle all the way up here. Whoops. And let's drop it below in the layer structure. Awesome, awesome. Okay, now we're starting to approach some sort of relationship structure on this map. My general plan would have some pretty large sea tiles around the edges to make sure that players that like Nanbu could come in and raid along the coast in multiple places. But we could also, of course, see Nanbu, for example, interact with Tokugawa if Tokugawa had this island or something as one of the neutrals. So who knows? Maybe like this is gonna look so ugly, but maybe we actually have a relationship going like this as well. Who knows? There's a lot of options. Probably we're not gonna try to add too much tension to poor old Tokugawa. So that's one of the things I was looking at here. The other thing is just quickly considering a neutral placement. And for the most part, you want to place neutrals between multiple players. It's okay to have centers be away from other players, like Tunis and Iberia and Classic, just having like safe pocket centers. But you should be more careful with adding those, and understand that it makes the power a bit slower compared to how I might choose to design this area. We should look at where we want to place these neutral clusters, as I often call them, to spark tension between powers. Let's get some sort of symbol, probably like let's do a hexagon. So as said, we want to generally place these neutral clusters between players, and often this will hook up the players to the same supply center chains, which will be a separate video. So there's a lot of things, there's lots of funny stuff here. For example, for this map, I would probably have some centers going on in this area that all of these three powers could vie for. I don't know how I want to mark this, but let's mark it. I want to make these a bit gray, I think. Okay, cool. So that's one of the places where I imagine we're gonna have a larger amount of neutral centers. I imagine we will also have something close to here, which mainly will be for the Oda and the Shosokabo. Let's just sketch that out and draw it to the bottom. Okay. I want to have a big cluster in this area, and this would tie together multiple powers, including the Mori, the Oda, the Takeda, and the Uesugi. So they would all try to play for this coast. Very nice. And of course we have this central area here, where the Wesugi, the Hojo, and the Nambu will be able to compete for supply centers. Let's see here. There we go. Okay. And I think that's likely like the main concentrations. We have covered quite a lot of the map already with playable powers, so we will need to be careful with where the neutrals will end up. In the next video, I will have placed all the borders for these powers, and we will start looking more. We'll do a little field study pretty much. I'll design the first little steps of this variant together with you guys, and I'll explain my processes, and then we might do other videos trying to analyze the map from certain perspectives, like the chain, tension, and such on. So yeah, it's gonna be funny. Some things that I already like consider here is, as I said, is how do we bring in Nanbu in an effective way, and so on, and how these very tight dynamics going to play out between the Oda, Tokugawa, Takeda, Hojo, and Uesugi, because this is an abnormally tight area, and it's going to be really fun, I think. Really excited for that. One last thing is home center counts, and yeah, I'll start with that. I had something else on my mind, but I forgot. So for the most case, I'd recommend to do a 3 center start for most of your powers in your first variant, because it's by far like the most standard, and in general I recommend making a standard variant as your first one, because there's a lot to learn from that. There might be stuff you're missing if you're rushing ahead to more wacky variants from the start. Yeah. The other thing is like splitting powers into multiple parts, like a colonial power. When doing that, you need to realize that unless you make like small separated parts very safe, you need to count on that power being much weaker and probably having the need to have a much higher neutral count around them to compensate, which we see, for example, in imperial diplomacy, with the colonials sometimes being able to double pretty much, and especially like colonials like the Dutch really needed to stay afloat. So in general, I recommend 3 center powers that aren't split into multiple parts. You can do 4 center powers if they have a ton of fronts and not a large neutral axis, but otherwise I'd balance the maps around them having 3 supply centers each. Anyways, thanks for me, and I'll see you in the next one.